John told us a little bit about the pastures. They were overused. How about your garden soil?
From the soil test that you guys returned, I believe it was 2% organic matter, and then it was really high in most of the trace minerals, like absurdly high. And we weren't quite sure what the reasoning was. I think after looking at the soil test and checking out Virginia Tech's like side-by-side analysis, it looked like that maybe somebody had heavily limed it, and that's why the pH was like 6.5. I mean, it was pretty alkaline.
6.5 is acid, I think, right?
No, I'm sorry. Then it was
7.5 or 8.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Then it was 8. I'm sorry. It was really
7 is the middle, right?
Yeah, 7 is the middle. I think it was alkaline, and it just looked like, from what they were recommending for lime and what that does to the pH, as well as what trace elements you'll have in abundance, it looked like that is what has happened out there, but it's super clay heavy. John took a skid steer and just scraped the grass clear, so there were trees and grass. It was a yard that we cleared, and then we went through with the subsoiler and a tiller, or was it a plow and a tiller?
We plowed it. Yeah.
We plowed
so
it.
we plowed it.
Disked.
And then disked it.
Yeah.
To break up the clumps.
Yeah, just once, because it was just
It was just solid clay.
It was terrible.
It looks
really
like
bad.
farming in a brick to me.
That's pretty much what it is.
So
What are you doing to bring back the organic matter?
So part of it is the farming methods we use. So we don't use any sort of sprays, because sprays kill above and below soil creatures. And then from there, when I harvest things, I leave the roots in so that there's food for the microbes and the worms and things like that, and a habitat below the soil surface. And then this year we have started bringing in compost from Black Bear Compost up in Augusta County. And they have brought so far 2 dump truck loads, and the hope is to get like a 2 to 3 inch layer of compost on every bed, and to do that for several years, to just bring in more organic matter, but also to give the soil a covering, because we know bare soil is not great and it blows away and all the things. So we're trying to continually keep it planted so that there's always a leaf cover, and then if it's not covered with like living creatures, then we have tarps that we put over it so that we don't have wind and water erosion. So just keeping it planted and bringing in more organic matter is the initial goal until we get something established, and then hopefully doing some like compost teas and worm casting teas, and then there was another one, some sort of like a fungal tea to just kind of recharge it and get it all going.
Are you doing worms here?
No.
So you get the worm castings from somebody else?
We buy them from the organic feed store. They do them locally here in Virginia, so they come from here. But since I've incorporated it, we've seen the earthworm population out in the garden it's just growing, which is great.
It's something I've seen in the pastures too.
Yeah.
And
Are you
then,
making eyes at the camera?
Mary, what are you raising in the garden?
Oh, all the things. So we primarily do a CSA, and so that's we're doing a 4-season CSA so that we can catch all the seasons and be able to eat year round. So just depending on what's in season, we have right now like greens and roots and herbs, and then as we move into the summer, it'll be things like tomatoes and peppers, eggplants, artichokes, beans, and then we'll work our way into the fall crops and winter crops. We try to choose heirloom or open pollinated varieties when we can, more so for flavor and quality.
Open pollinated? What's that mean?
Yeah, open pollinated, that means that they, like if I were to collect the seed, that they would be true to seed. So there's hybrids.
Oh, right.
And then heirloom, and then open pollinated, but they're not as reliable. So hybrids, you can almost bet on the crop, and we buffer with one hybrid for every other, just in case we have a crop loss. but we try to tend towards the open pollinated and the heirloom varieties, so because they taste better, they're better for you. They're good. They're really good. And then we do flowers, not a ton, but we also have some flowers, and we're gonna do a small cut tea garden this year, which is kind of cool in the tunnels. So like stinging nettles and chamomile and things like that. So
great.
we're just trying some new things. But, So this big mound is the second dumping of the black bear compost. So I mean, it's gorgeous. Nice and black, and I'm just kind of, it's a little dry on the surface, but if you just, yeah, there you go.
Yummy.
And it's all like food waste and scraps, and so we found a couple like wrappers that are kind of decomposed, which is kind of cool. My kids, I made them help me put compost out, and they'd be like, look, it's a Twinkie wrapper, or you know, whatever. They were just like so excited about it. And I have a tarp underneath, and then the tarp of the tunnel so that it doesn't leach. This tunnel is not composted like we'd like it, but it's in progress, so you can take a peek. So I have overwintered greens like spinach and lettuce that have been slowly but steadily growing. There's some fruit trees that are going to get ready to be planted in there. And then the places that have the black compost now, those are fresh starts that I've been growing in the house. So we have hot pink grow lights in our house, and we have this really long hallway, so at night, as soon as the sun sets, our whole bottom layer of our house glows pink, so it looks like a haunted house. And so the first year we were here, all our neighbors, because you can see it from all the way from Rafine or 250, you can just see the pink house, and they'd be like, what are you growing in there? And I'd be like, tomatoes and lettuce. And so we have the hot pink hall, where right now we just potted up tomatoes, so we have tomatoes that are about this big right now, and peppers and artichokes and tomatillos, and then I have so this is where the plants go to get hardened off. So all of these were grown in the house with the grow lights, and then yep, you can pull that up, David. You pull up a little, there you go. So we've got some Asian greens and beets and chives and lettuces, and we try to transplant everything that we can for two reasons. First reason, I know exactly what my germination rate is, and then the second, every little bit of, like every plug is more organic matter that we're putting into the garden, which is really nice. And then, so this is kind of the tunnel in progress. We let one side kind of go wild because we didn't need the space, but we wanted to keep it covered in living things. And so now I'm going through and pulling out all the wild plants and planting in what we want. And then the next tunnel, I'll show you, has the compost laid out, and then we've planted into it, and the plants are just loving it. And then we try to have like established walkways so that we are only putting compaction in one spot every single time, so that the beds can kind of stay fluffy. But we don't till, so we need to really kind of stay on those paths so that we are not compacting the actual beds. Almost everything is drip tape, so it's low flow, really good water conservation versus a sprinkler, so you're not losing any to the air, you're not losing any to quick evaporation. It's just this really slow, steady feed of water, which is really nice. And then I can show you the next tunnel, and you can see the compost. So this is the non-composted wild tunnel, and then like the clean, nice tunnel. That is actually the pool tarp from the pool in off of Route 11. It's the community pool.
Oh yeah, just
where my kids swim.
Yeah, so those are we have
At
two
Fairfield?
pool tarps, yeah, that have been donated.
Huh.
that we're using to keep the soil covered, but then also it's called oculation, and it's using something that blocks out sunlight, so you get the ground wet and then the seeds want to germinate, but because they don't have any sunlight, they eventually like just wither and die. So it's a twofold benefit to keep them covered if you don't have plants in them.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. And then this is the cleaner of the tunnels, the more organized.
Oh gosh, that's warm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, those are happy plants. Nice and warm.
Yeah,
So in the winter, were you above freezing in here all the time?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then the nice thing is like a tunnel will be, depending on the sunshine, can be anywhere from, 5 to 30 degrees warmer than outdoor ambient temperatures. But then we also had, it's like roughly 1 USDA zone warmer than outside.
Okay.
So then you can put a second layer with small, like, metal, like steel hoops.
Okay,
and then you
right.
put what we call row cover, so it still allows light through, but also keeps the microclimate. And with the second layer down low, you can actually move 2 USDA zones south.
So a larger tunnel and then smaller tunnels closer to the ground. Huh, concentrates it.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, ideally, the biggest tunnel that you can afford to build is the best because it's a better heat sink. So these are fairly small, but it's all that we could put together ourselves and afford for our startup costs. But if you so if this was one tunnel, which they make tunnels that are, easily the same width, it would hold that ambient temperature longer, and you wouldn't have such fluctuations, as well as you'd have like colder sides and a much more moderate center. So, but it's what we have, and I mean,
Looking good.
slow growings, but good. Yeah, so we have kales and turnips. We have a lot of Asian greens, radishes in the front, spinach in the back, red mustards, and then this will be the tomato tunnel. So we'll put tomatoes in there, and then in here we'll start putting artichokes and peppers and eggplants and cucumbers and all that fun summer stuff.
How many people are you looking for your CSA?
30 is
30?
the goal. So we do here on this farm all the fresh eating things. So we don't do any storage crops because the garden is just as big as it is. But we have a sister farm in Stewart's Draft, and they do nothing but storage crops for us. So they do sweet potatoes, onions, garlic, so that we're able, 2 small family farms are able to kind of partner together to make that work,
Great.
which is nice. Yeah. So it's really,
How do you get the people of Rockbridge to eat your food?
oh, that's a good one. So we started at the farmers market, and we, I would say primarily through collecting emails with just people that we would talk to at the farmers market, we were able to start to build a small following. And then all of our neighbors out here are really curious about what we're doing. They're like, who are the strange people that move their chickens every day and that have reclaimed this house? And so we've had a lot of people, word of mouth is the best.
Right.
So either they've met us or they've come out to the farm because someone recommended it. It's slow growing, but really, really supportive once somebody's kind of come here and seen what we do and how we do it. So it's good, and it'll get better. It's a slow introduction to the community.